And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, with you until 8 p.m. tonight. We'll be talking about the hockey playoffs are underway. The girls' basketball brackets are out. Regular season is wrapping up on the girls' side, and the boys are heading down the stretch as well, with their brackets being announced on Sunday. Our guests tonight coming up will be a little bit later. Both our guests again in the 7 o'clock hour. At 7 o'clock, we'll be joined by Wausau West hockey senior captain Grant Halmstad. And then at 7:40, the first-year head coach of the DC Everest Evergreens having a fine season, Oliver Drake. Good evening.
Good to be here. I appreciate you always having me back.
Hey, we're heading down the stretch. I was thinking about this. We're less than a month away, I think, from the last show. So
that's a sad thought.
I know.
Go there.
Well, but the thing about it is, we are now into the playoffs. Last night was my first playoff broadcast. It was Wausau West hockey against Marshfield, and Warriors were expected to win. Grant Halmstad, who's going to be our guest. I mean, we never want to bring in a guest after their season ends because the assumption is they're going to win. But at the same time, you know, sports is sports. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. And I have to say, after the game last night, and then when I woke up, it felt like Friday. I mean, I was just drained. And I'm not even part of the team. I'm just doing the games. And I kind of felt depressed about it all day. You coached for more than a decade as the head coach, and every year you lost the last game. I mean, the only team that wins is the team that wins the championship in the division. What's it like when the season ends, and especially maybe when it's a surprise where you're expecting to play tomorrow night? I think West was expecting to go to Superior. We're ready for this long bus ride tomorrow to Superior. Instead, game ends 2-0 Marshfield. What was it like for you when the season came to an end? Well,
I'll start by saying you had a little taste. Like how you felt just think of it. When you're fully engulfed in something, when you believe in something, when you're part of something, that's the big kicker is the emotions that you can feel of how tightly bonded you become to that. I mean, that's what you're describing is exactly what it's like at the end. I mean, you don't get to actually play the game, but you're so much part of the game as you coach it. And so the difficulty when it ends, especially when it ends before you think, whether you get upset or you didn't win the game you and your team thought you were going to win, that's the hardest part. I absolutely hated going into the locker room, seeing the looks on the faces, and it was all the team, because those kids, they spill out their emotions and their heart, and when they're all invested, it just lets loose after that last game. I mean, I shouldn't say I hated it. I wanted to be there for him, and you had to be the bigger person. But the hardest thing was looking seniors in the eyes, because they have no more time, and you can't give them anything. And there's not always, you try to console them, but there's not the words there. So that was always the biggest difficulty. Knowing that you wouldn't be going to the next step or the next practice, or getting to see some of these guys in the same light of the chumminess and the camaraderie and the relationships that you built from that specific season, because I think every unique season had its own story to tell. Mm-hmm. And so that was the hardest part, was when those kids had to take that jersey off for the last time, the graduating seniors, and then also looking at the kids that were, whether it was their practice time that was invested or they were part of the rotation, and they were done. And we always tried to make it such a point to thank the seniors for everything they had given, thank the entire team, and also get a realization of, take a look at your teammate who's done. This is going to be you before you know it. And it's just this journey where, you know, just like you said, for the last show, I mean, it seems like we were just talking about where these teams stand, and conference play is starting. And now we're already talking playoffs brackets. So it's not easy being in that locker room at the end. One of the most difficult things I think you have to do as a coach. But you put the big boy shoes on, and you have to be big for the players in that locker room, because it's ultimately their time and efforts that helped make everything what it was. They make everything go, so you owe it to them, in my mind, at the end, to give them the proper send-off, to make everything sure, make no stones left unturned on what needs to be said in a positive moment, to try to drive how much you appreciate those kids. That was always the way I looked at it. I appreciated more than they ever knew how much they did to help our program and our team. And I think they need to know that when the season ends, whether it's abruptly or whether it's expected or whether it just happened the way it didn't go down. But if you truly care about something, everybody's going to feel it together. And you get to do it together. That is also a big deal. Being in with just the kids and your coaching staff, that's huge in my mind.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the hockey results from last night to start off with the playoffs now underway.
Rewind that. You're going hockey? No, I'm just kidding.
We're going to go with the hockey
here. Go for it. I'm kidding.
And last night in Division I, top seeds Stevens Point and Eau Claire Memorial got byes. As I said, game that we had right here on Bull Falls Radio, Marshfield upset West. And I got to say, Marshfield played exceptionally well. I think that is probably the biggest win in that program's history. Marshfield does not have a hockey tradition where they've made any deep runs. I mean, they have not been a team that's been near the top of the Wisconsin Valley Conference this season. They lost to West 7-2 and 7-0. But last night, 2-0. It was scoreless until late in the second period when Marshfield was able to get a rebound home. Stayed 1-0 until West pulled their goalie late. Marshfield was able to get the empty netter. 39 shots, 39 saves in net. Marshfield really just did all the little things they needed to, and they earned the trip to Superior tomorrow night. Superior, the number 3 seed, defeated the Northwest Icemen, and the Icemen did not cometh. They lost 14-0 to Superior. Also, it was actually a tough night for the Wausau area teams in hockey last night. DC Everest, the number 10 seed, they lost to Eau Claire North by a score of 7-2, so the Evergreen season comes to an end. Eau Claire North will travel to the Willett Arena tomorrow night to take on number 2 seed Dispatch. Also, East Merrill United, they went to a Hudson. Very tough trip, a long trip and a tough hockey team. And the two-time defending state champion Hudson Raiders knocked off the Blue Jacks 12-0. Hudson will take on their Big Rivers Conference rival Chippewa Falls. Chippewa Falls, the number 5 seed, beat Ashland last night 10-0. And Wisconsin Rapids, a Valley team, did advance. So Rapids and Marshfield advance. West, Everest, and East Merrill United all fall. Rapids last night defeated Thomas Sparta 6-0. But Rapids now has the number 1 seed tomorrow night. They travel to Hobbs in Eau Claire, take on the number 1 Eau Claire Memorial Old Abe. So it's interesting. Rapids and Marshfield, not usually the teams that would advance, but West is done, Everest is done, Blue Jacks are done, and the regional finals tomorrow night.
And your summary of our local teams in hockey kind of can sum up what the playoffs can be. It's new life for everybody.
Yes.
What you've done up till that point can be commended, but it's not something you can sit and rest. I'm not saying these teams didn't give their best efforts, but it takes a bad night. It takes an off thing. It takes somebody being out of routine. Anything. They're still high school athletes playing the game to the best of their ability, and things can happen. People rise above. So, as much as it's hard to see a team that might be favored lose if they expect to be in that next level, it's such a new experience for that other team to say, we've got nothing to lose. And teams are dangerous when they have all the pressure off them, and the other team has it all on them.
And the thing about it as well is there's that senior factor. And Coach Brandt, after the game in our post-game interview, said it's another senior goaltender who played like it was his last opportunity. And it really was. Cole Halverson for Marshfield had been a long-time starter. Actually had struggled this year. His numbers were not good, and yet he came through with 39 saves and 39 shots to keep his career alive and keep his team alive. And sometimes those seniors, there are some that have that next gear for whatever reason. You may not see it very often. And also, you talk about trying to peak at the right time. Peak at the right time. And West had peaked at the right time. Before the game we're talking about, they had peaked. They had played their best hockey the last 4 games. They played really well. But the peak is only the peak because he can go down at any time as well.
Exactly.
I mean, the peak it's not usually a plateau. It's usually you're up and down, and unfortunately you go down at the wrong time as well.
Well, and I think seniors being dangerous, the number of times walked in the locker room during playoffs, and if we were playing a team that was more experienced than us in terms of the upperclassmen they had playing, that was a point of emphasis because these guys were going to leave it all on whatever surface they were playing on to finish off those games and to be a big part of what they can make their next step. And so you said it best when the Marshfield goaltender came to play, because that's a senior being dangerous, making the most of every moment, not wanting to see that career end.
And want to touch briefly on the girls' side of the bracket. The Central Wisconsin Storm, defending state champs, they open up their playoff run tomorrow night. They're a number 2 seed. I shouldn't say anything after what happened last night, but expected to win tomorrow against number 7 seeded Northern Pines. Storm in the regular season beat Pines 13-0. In fact, they could have probably scored more. Yeah. So unless Northern Pines is hiding something that I was not aware of that first time around, the Storm in good shape. But then they would face off with the number 4 ranked team in the state, likely Hayward, the number 3 seed. They take on Medford tomorrow night. But 3 of the top 4 teams in the state in the same sectional, the sectional semifinals next Tuesday, and then the following Friday night, the sectional championship. But Storm, with good experience, obviously knowing what it takes to get to Madison and win the championship. But their run starts tomorrow night against Northern Pines.
And how many times have you talked about them over the years and what they've accomplished and what the expectations are now, where the bar's set so high that the pressures and maybe the routine even is what they're trying to match every single year. And it sounds like right now, as much as that the Pines team used to be a big rivalry game, they've got it. They're going to have it under control, but definitely a very difficult sectional from what you're describing that they must get through.
Absolutely. And Storm, 4-time state champs, 2008, 2012, 2017, and last year in 2022. We'll take a quick timeout and then come back and talk about boys basketball as they are now into the stretch run in terms of the conference championship races, trying to get some W's late to improve that computer seeding, which will be coming up on Sunday of this week. So again, we'll take a break, come back with more. It is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, our guests will both be coming up in hour number 2 at 7 o'clock from the Wausau West hockey team, senior captain Grant Halmstad. And then at 7:40, our coach guest for this week from DC Everest, boys basketball coach Oliver Drake. Well, let's go into the basketball and Wisconsin Valley Conference and looking at what's been going on. With the Valley, you don't know what's going to happen on any particular night. It really is crazy in terms of what you see, where somebody will win on the road, they'll lose at home, they'll have a big win, then they'll lose by a big margin. It's just really been crazy in the WVC. But looking at some of the action, last Thursday night, DC Everest knocked off Wausau West 76-55. Marcus Hall, Casey Studeman 18, Connor McFarland 17 for Everest. Good balance for DCE. Also last Thursday in Wausau at East High, Wisconsin Rapids, who had fallen to East at home earlier, rolled past the Lumberjacks 73-55. Evan Matthews 26 points, Cade Youngworth 17, Jesse Napgezik 18 for East. Stevens Point, very impressive, rolling past Merrill last Thursday 69-36. Jaron Sues had 17, Ariel Council Jr. and Noah Marshke 16 each for the Panthers. Tyson Glish 11 for Merrill. And then Friday, Wisconsin Rapids faced a very good La Crosse Central team on the road, played very competitively, but fell 57-50. Youngworth 17, Matthews 16 in that game. And then this week, Monday, Merrill knocked off Wittenberg Burnhamwood on the road, 62-42. Braden Pieper, 20 points. Tyson Glish, 15 for the Blue Jays. Mason Meverden, 16 for Wittenberg. And then last night, a classic in Stevens Point. And one thing we're going to talk about here between Spash and Marshfield, both the girls and the boys went double overtime in the past week. Crazy stuff. Stevens Point last night handed Marshfield their first conference loss. Did not allow Marshfield to clinch outright the conference championship. Spash 62, Marshfield 20 in double overtime. Ariel Council Jr. and Jaron Sues had 18 points. Luke Lemoyne and Evan Hansen 16 for Marshfield. Was Merrill won at Wisconsin Rapids. Blue Jays, who had some struggles recently in the conference, but able to go to Rapids, take a huge halftime lead, and then win 57-49. Braden Pieper 16, EJ Wykes 14, Sean Reynes 17 for the Red Raiders. Good one last night at Wausau West. We're not going to see this very often anymore, a couple of more years,
right,
and then it's going to be all done. But Wausau West defeated Wausau East 58-56. Warriors got a basket in the final 20 seconds to take the lead and earn the win. And also last night, terrific non-conference game. Medford beat DC Everest 79-68. Marcus Hall had a big night for the Evergreens, 33 points. Casey Studeman, 17. Logan Baumgartner, 30 for Medford. So looking at the conference, you got Marshfield 9-1, 16-6 overall. Everest and Spash, both 7-3 in the conference. Everest 14-7. Stevens Point 11-10 overall. Merrill 4-6 in the league, 10-11 overall. Wausau West now 4-7 in the conference, 8-13 overall. East is 3-8 in the league, 7-14 overall, and Rapids 2-8 in the conference, 7-14 overall.
In looking at the standings, I think one of the better weeks was I thought Spash. They went and they handled Merrill really well on Thursday. Came back with the big win to give Marshfield their first loss in the conference, and they're going to jump ahead with Rapids, who could be a little rivalry game, but should pick up 3 wins here in a quality week. So coming around a little bit, maybe they're peaking when they want to and trying to solidify that second place spot in the conference. Everest, I think, played some good games, handled West, who'd been playing better at this point. Anybody, you can't complain when you lose to Medford. Medford's a very good basketball team, so, a good game.
Especially in that little gym.
Yeah, and the balanced scoring attack they were getting. You were listing some guys. Hall still putting up his numbers, but some other guys coming.
Yeah, in the game against Everest,
rally
three guys between 17 and 18.
Yep. And then, for West and Maryland East, who are kind of battling in that next tier with the wins losses they had, it's going to come down to a couple of these games they have left. Merrill and Merrill came and had a nice non-conference win against Wittenberg, bounced back against Rapids, so they're 2-1 over the past 3 games that they've had and getting some poor production out of their guys that are in the rotation all the time. It's sad to hear you say that the West East, that's such a, no matter what anybody's record is, that crosstown rivalry, man, is that a big deal. I remember even when I was in high school and I was playing at Newman, I'd go watch those games because it was a big deal to see them go at each other, and to think you're not going to have that. That's a tough one to just think about. But again, it held true. It came down to the wire. I saw the last 5 minutes and it was back and forth. So just again to get a game that kind of solidified being, whether you're ahead of the other team or not in the pack there. And then, like you said, Rapids, still looking for a little consistency. They came out in terms of how they performed, because they came out, they handled East on Thursday, played very well against a good La Crosse Central team, but didn't come out with a W. And then, had to fight back to make the score closer than it actually was throughout the basketball game against Merrill. So, a choppiness in the conference, but I think other than, there's a little bit of play yet with those couple games left in the between Spash and DC Everest, and then you got Merrill West East, all could kind of hang around each other. Otherwise, I think Marshfield's pretty good where they're sitting.
Great Northern Conference, and I tell you, we knew going into the season what a great race it was going to be. But the games between the teams that were expected to battle, Medford, Pines, and Mosinee, boy, they have not disappointed. I mean, each and every one of these games seems like it's been going down to the nub. And last Friday night, Medford knew that they needed to win one of the two against Mosinee and Pines in order to make sure that they were going to have a conference championship. And last Friday, Pines did everything they could, but came up 1 point short as they were in Medford, and Pines gave themselves a shot. But Medford last Friday knocked off Pines 59-58. Logan Baumgartner, 19. Charlie Kleist, 18. Ryan Munch had 16 for Pines. So that clinches outright the conference championship for Medford. Looking at the standings before we talk about some of the other games, Medford 11-0 in the conference, 18-4 overall. Pines 8-2 in the conference, both losses to Medford, 16-5 overall. Mosinee 7-3 in the conference, 15-6 overall. Both Rhinelander and Lakeland 4-6 in the conference. Rhinelander 6-14 overall. Lakeland 11-9. Antigo 2-8 in conference, 3-18 overall. Tomahawk 0-11 in the league, 4-16 overall. Also on Friday, Rhinelander beat Lakeland for the second time this season, 57-53. So Lakeland's 4-6 in the conference. Those 2 losses to Rhinelander really stand out, keeping Lakeland from being in that top tier in the conference. Antigo beat Tomahawk 51-41 Friday as well. Monday, Mosinee had a great non-conference test against a very good Eau Claire Memorial team, a very athletic team for Memorial. And it must have been a fun game because 93-81, Memorial defeated Mosinee. Keegan Jershely, 26. Davin Stoffel, 22. Blake Nichols, 19 for Mosinee. The Abes had 5 different players in double figures in that game. And last night, Lakeland beat Crandon 83-67.
what can you say about Medford to 11-0 at this point, and up at the top of that conference between them, Pines and Mosinee, we knew to battle, and to hold your spot, you got to feel great about that. And they're jumping out, getting good non-conference wins against Everest, 79-68, and still Baumgartner makes things go. He can hit from 20 to 30 on any given night, and Robbie and Kleist are averaging 14 points a game as well. So for Medford, I had to look a couple times at the score because they won 59-58 Friday against Bedford, and there was another game that was within a point somewhere else real quick. It was tight. One of the previous games last week when they had a win, I thought it was 58-59 again somewhere in there. So it was real tight in terms of the score. And then, for Pines, just it's a tough one because it's close, but you have those two losses in the conference, taking the last one to Medford where you gave them a great game and just weren't able to come out on top. I think they're going to be a team to watch here in the playoffs with that senior experience that they have, and those kids, that's a dangerous group. The scoring punch they can give, how long they played basketball together here is really going to be a big deal to not see their careers end sooner than they want, which is obviously going to be down at the Kohl Centers what they want to do. Mosinee, played a good non-conference game in Eau Claire Memorial, came a little short. A lot of points in that game when you got one team scoring 93 and the other one 81. And, still getting Jerschley and Stoffel, averaging almost close to 20 points each. And I think, every now and then, just teams that can squeeze in there a little bit, Rhinelander and Lakeland. I mean, I know there's only a couple conference games, but maybe around playoffs, they've put together little games here and there where I know Rhinelander's experienced some injuries. Lakeland has done okay and competitively against a couple teams where it's just, if they put both halves together, it looks like that could be a team to watch.
And they had that 1-point game against Medford a few weeks back. So, I mean, obviously a team that has that ability to step up when the competition comes into their gym as well. Merriwood South, much like the GNC, it's been a terrific battle at the top of this league, and it's coming down to the nub. You have Newman and Marathon, both 13-1 overall. Both are 18-3 overall. Auburndale, 17-3 overall, 11-3 in the conference. Stratford, 8-6 in the conference, 11-8 overall. Assumption, 6-8 in the conference, 10-12 overall. And Edgar, 5-9 in the conference, 7-14 overall. Last Thursday, the week started with a big win for Auburndale against Athens, 50-49. Athens, of course, the first place team in the Merriwood North. Alex Wilfart had 20 points, Aiden Yankee, 19 for Athens. And then last Friday, again, more crossovers. Marathon, in a game that we had right here on Bull Falls Radio, defeated Phillips 85-67. Grant Warren, 32 points, 18 rebounds, 7 assists. Mason Seehafer added 16 for Marathon. Nate Belon had 23 points for Phillips. Newman defeated Prentice 80-66. Mason Prey 25. Isaac Seidel had 17. Ashton Makovsky 25 for Prentice. Shawamigan went to Edgar and knocked off the Wildcats 59-54. A.J. Morgan 25 points for the Screaming Eagles. Assumption beat Stratford 74-43. Ryan Shaw 32 points for Assumption. Stratford over Rib Lake 58-45. Ashton Wrench 20. Brady Schmidt 18 for the Tigers. On Saturday, I was down at the Dells, seeing Newman Catholic in action. Newman got past Platteville. Good non-conference win for Newman Catholic, 68-65. Mason Prey 26. Isaac Seidel 17. Jackson Fender 15 for the Cards. Marathon went north, knocked off Rhinelander 69-55 Saturday. Grant Warren doing Grant Warren things. Another double-double, 26 points, 16 rebounds. Mason Seehafer, 14 for the Red Raiders. And Edgar fell to Bondwell Saturday, 71-38. And then finally last night, Newman, another good non-conference road game. They lost to Columbus, 86-81. Columbus, I think, is 14-6 overall, Division III team. Isaac Seidel, 26. Mason Prey, 25. Connor Kroc, 21. Prey set the all-time Newman Catholic scoring record in that game, beating Bob Barnett, correct?
Correct. I'll share later.
Okay, and Marathon beat Wittenberg-Burnhamwood 88-56 last night. Grant Warren, season-high 36 points, 12 rebounds. Drew Love, 20 points as well for Marathon. And Assumption, Ryan Shaw, another big night, 27 points, beating Northern Lutheran 87-53. So, boy, again, there have been some incredible team and individual performances within this group this season.
Yeah, the accolades on what you can talk about of what these teams and individuals are accomplishing are quite there's no limit in that conference of what's happening. I guess I'm going to start with Stratford just to say,
Yep.
I've watched them play live a couple times, and you're sitting at a team that may be just a little bit under 500 when you're watching them play and judging what skill sets that Coach Schmidt has to work with and what to maximize the most out of your players. And I think they're 11-8 overall, 8-6. They're not getting pushed around. They're playing competitively. They're winning and losing some games that they should be doing on both sides. So I got to give Coach Schmidt a little kudos on that, on the job he's doing with that team as they're progressively getting a little better here as the season rolls around, to fight to keep that record over 500. The other top three, you go up there with Marathon, Newman, and Auburndale. Auburndale, if you can even mark it, just a smidge underneath, just based on what they've accomplished. But 17-3, 11-3 overall in the conference. They beat the top team in the North, which most people have not been able to do or have gotten a really good game out of. And I think they're going to be a team that can push some people really well in the playoff. You're not going to want to match up with them. I think they're dangerous. Plus, they're fairly deep and senior driven with the top with some of those guys they have in their starting five. The war comes down on Friday between the two teams we're going to talk about with Marathon and Newman Catholic. And I'll start with Marathon. To hopping out, play back to back. They got the Phillips game. They got the Rhinelander game. You can talk about the amount of points and rebounds Grant Warren's getting, but when you talk to the team and the coach and even Grant himself, how things are being distributed, it's not like this is the end all. It's a team. It's a program working together, and it works for them. And that double he averages is impressive, all in the sense that it's done under the concept of team first, and we're building this together. So it's just another marathon season where they find the success. They're hanging in the top of the conference with conference title aspirations that they want to get. For Newman, I think really challenging schedule. I mean, they had to duke it out a little bit with, the game was in hand, but they had to duke it out a little bit with Prentice. Prentice came after them and threw some things at them and didn't go away, but they controlled that game. And then to go play in Platteville down on a neutral site, which is kind of different on that college court, and go play, and they're a good non-conference team, as well as even the loss to Columbus last night. We were playing up a couple divisions, and you play out of your element. Long drive on a Tuesday night, I think, are really going to get them ready for not only a playoff atmosphere, but the atmosphere that you're going to see, which will be a playoff atmosphere in the gym and Marathon. And to those kids, the credit to those seniors on what they've been able to accomplish, what they put forth. And I'll even give another perk. I went and talked to those 6 seniors, and without even a hesitation, I invited them to our 6th grade boys basketball practice, and they're all in. They want to come and help out the little guy. I mean, they just don't even bat an eye about doing stuff, which I thought was really cool when you're in the midst of what you're trying to accomplish. And for Mason, I was there when I was a sophomore when the scoring record got broke by Chris Gustafson, who's Eli's dad. And then the next year, I was a junior when Bob Barnett broke it, who all broke the record of Dan Witter, who was our coach at the time. So for Mason to do that, that's quite an accomplishment, because I watched both Gus and Barnett put up a massive amount of points. And for Mason to do that, that's a big accolade to do that at our school.
And he's so consistent. He had 25 on Friday. He had 26 on Saturday. He had 25 last night. I mean, he's just, every night he brings that work pail, and he performs every night.
And the other thing, also senior night. I don't know, again, if you weren't there in person, you didn't see it. There's 6 seniors. 5 can start. Who gave up their starting spot so one of his other buddies could start?
Mason.
Yep, Mason did. One of the neat things I've seen in high school sports.
Absolutely. Marywood North, Athens, still having a great year despite that tight loss against Auburndale. They're 11-3 in the conference, 16-5 overall. Prentice, as you said, they gave Newman a pretty decent run, 6-8 in the conference, 10-10 overall. Rib Lake 5-9 in the conference, 11-10. Shawamigan 5-9 in the conference, 9-13. Phillips 1-13 in the conference, 6-15 overall. Abbotsford 0-14 in the conference, 1-21 overall. We talked about those crossover games. Athens did bounce back in a non-conference game Monday, defeating Pittsville 61-42. Shawamigan had a pretty good week. I mean, tell you, they beat Edgar on Monday. They beat Washburn by 2, 71-69, and then last night they rolled past South Shore 80-37. Phillips beat Three Lakes 60-58 last night, and Prentice over Mercer 87-42. Before you jump in, I got to say, I mean, I can't believe Phillips is 1-13 in the conference based on what I saw against Marathon the other night. Marathon came out and took a 20-0 lead, 20-0 early. Phillips came back. They made it a 10-point game at halftime. They got to within 6 early in the second half. They got a freshman guard that's very solid. They got a sophomore guard that's pretty solid. And they got a couple of big guys that actually play pretty well as well. I mean, sometimes you see these numbers, you think, boy, they must be terrible. Right. No, that team, they played hard. And Amy Ring is the coach. You don't see too many female coaches of a boys team. I watched her. She really, I thought it was impressive the way that she kept her team in there. The way she was working the sidelines with her team. So again, I just was when I went to there the other night and it started 20-0. I'm thinking running clock for sure. Yep. You know, it was going to be a 50-point game, and the way they came back and did not give up the ship against one of the better teams in the area, I thought was very impressive.
Yeah, well, that's a credit to the coach and the relationship they have with the players and the players' attitudes and how hard they're going to work. I mean, it's easy at 20-0 to pack it in and give up. So I think that's the mentality that the players have, whether
in
it's
a long drive back to Phillips.
But whether that's driven through the coaches or it's the players' mentality, I mean, it's all got to come hand in hand. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so you like to see things. Plus, that it could be one of those teams where the record's deceiving, where they're just young yet and they're trying to put it all together. And there's going to be a lot of growing pains, and maybe they'll get over the hump in a bunch of games this year. But they learn from every one of those, and good things continue to happen as those guys progress up into upperclassmen.
And quickly, Athens is still right there. I mean, to play a 1-point game against Auburndale, they may have lost it, but that's still an impressive performance.
Yeah, that's not a bad loss anyway. I mean, Coach Weinfurt has been around. He knows how to coach in tight games. He's going to have his players prepared. Auburndale is not. They're a third-place team in the Merrillwood South, so that kind of says that they're much better when you say a third-place team. And for Athens to continue to progress as they do, they have expectations for when the playoffs roll around, that they want to make it farther than they did by a couple games this year. And they bounced back right away and took control of Pittsville in their game Monday night. And Yankee and Sheehan, they got a couple guys almost putting up 20 points a game. That trade blows every time.
CWC Northland Lutheran had a chance for a conference championship on Monday, but came up short. Northland set things up because last Thursday they knocked off Boulder in a tight 155-53. Also last Thursday, Wisconsin Valley Lutheran against a solid Tigerton team. I'm not sure what happened, but it was a low-scoring affair, 30-25, but Tigerton held off Wisconsin Valley Lutheran. And then Monday, the two teams tied for first in the conference. Marion came to Northland. Northland had a 30-24 lead at halftime, but in the end, Marion rallies to win 61-57. So Marion 9-1 in the conference, 11-10 overall. Northland 8-2 in the conference, 13-6 overall. Tigerton 8-3 in the conference, 14-7 overall. Boulder 6-4 in the conference, 9-12 overall. Wisconsin Valley Lutheran 3-7 in the league, 7-11 overall. Then White Lake 1-9, Gresham 1-10.
Yeah, tough one. 57-61's respectable. When you're playing what should be on paper the toughest team in the conference, and it's just a hard one. They go on the road and do it, and it was a I don't know. I'm never been a fan of a Monday night game. You're coming off the week. Everybody's got because you got to get the kids up a little bit because it's like you practice. When's your practice on Sunday can be at a different time if you're able to do that, and so it was those are always a tough one. And so when you're vying for the conference title. Not maybe best scheduled game, but when it was. And obviously it shows a little bit with Northern Lutheran and playing Assumption and being beat 87-53. Gives you a good feel how your conference wars are your conference wars. There's different levels of when different conferences cross over and play each other, and you can see that there. But for Northern, 13-6 overall, 8-2 in the conference, very, very respectable in what they've been able to accomplish right now.
CWC East, it was a rough week for Wittenberg-Burnham. They started last Thursday in the conference, losing to Amherst 70-61. Marshall Fraser 14 points, 10 boards. Jet Rogowski 12 points for Whitburn. And then we talked about earlier the non-conference losses. They lost by 20 to Merrill Monday, and they lost to Marathon by more than 30 last night. So Whitburn now 6-6 in their conference, 7-14 overall. Shiocton is going to win the conference. They're 10-1. Wyowega Fremont 8-4. Amherst and Bondwell 7-5. Whitburn 6-6. Manawa 5-7. Menominee Indian 4-7. Iola 0-12. But Whitburn, you look at the conference 6-6, they're 1-8 in non-conference games.
Yeah,
And they obviously play a tough schedule. I mean, I'll be heading over there Monday. They'll play Wausau West, another Division I team. I mean, they obviously are testing themselves. But I wanted to ask you about that because in putting together a schedule, can you sometimes go a little too far with it?
Oh, definitely. And sometimes we don't always know, because unless we're checking every single box score for every single team, every single game, how injury, sicknesses, what do they play out? And sometimes your team can be a little bit consistent in a way you weren't expecting, and whether they're not hitting the boards well, your defense isn't coming along like you think, and you're expected to be this, and you're not when it rolls around. So that can change. Your schedule's set, so you got to go battle each and every night, try your best. I think it's going to make them tougher in the long run, but as you can see, especially in the Amherst game, which is one of their conference rivals, they're just not finishing it out enough. Against the Merrill, who they crossed over and played in the Valley, similar size, 20 points, and Marathon was 20 plus, 25 plus again there. So it's just a little bit difference in those scores, and you can go over the edge sometimes. And I think it's been it should help prepare you a little bit for that playoff run, but sometimes it can also bang you up and make you mentally think of what type of caliber team you have.
We have to take a break. We'll come back, talk about the girls. They're heading to the end of the regular season here in the next day or two, and then the playoffs begin next week. So we'll have that. Again, our guest coming up in hour number 2, Grant Halmstad, the Wausau West Warrior hockey captain, will join us at 7, and then finally, after all these years, a DC Everest boys basketball coach will appear on our program.
Chad's very happy about it. He's journaling about it right now.
Oliver Drake will be joining us at 7:40. More to come here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO with Jeff Gress. I'm Chad Holmes. Let's talk about girls basketball. On this segment, we're going to worry about what's been going on, where the conferences are. We'll talk about the brackets a little bit later on and what games will be coming up on Tuesday night. But again, there are a lot of interesting conference races going on. And again, it's great when you have these games that you look forward to and they live up to the hype. Right. And in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, we talked about last week, Stevens Point, they stubbed their toe against Merrill. That meant it was all on the line last Friday when the Marshfield Tigers came into Stevens Point and 68-67 double overtime. Pretty amazing to have a girls game Friday go double overtime. Then the boys on Tuesday go double overtime between the same two schools. But Emma Josie, huge night, 32 points for Spash. Elena Boosum had 21 for Marshfield. Also last Friday, Wausau West defeated Wausau East. Again, saddened that those are coming to an end.
It's so weird. I'm still weirded out by that. I know it is. But anyways, go ahead.
Got 2 more years.
Yeah.
67-44 Warriors over the Jacks. Lexi White, so consistent, 19 points. Kelly Cray at 17. Kenzie Deaton, 13. Merrill beat Wisconsin Rapids. They did not have a letdown after the big win against Spash the previous Tuesday. They beat Rapids 56-46. Monday, West over Appleton West in a non-conference game, 50-42. Missed consistency. Lexi White, 19 points again. Kelly Cray, 10 points, 11 boards. Molly Anderson, 10 points, 10 rebounds. Last night, Stevens Point beat Rhinelander in a non-conference game, 79-55. Josie had 19. Lindsay Weiler, 18. Adelie Nest had 17 for Spash. Lily Trader, 26. Ava Lamers, 19 for Rhinelander. Eau Claire North edged Everest. Boy, it would have been nice for Everest to get that W, but they fell in a tight one, 57-54. Braylon Byler had a nice night. Hit 5 of 9 3-pointers, 22 points for the Evergreens. So Spash with the big win, 10-1 in the conference, 16-7 overall. Marshfield, 9-2 in the conference, 18-5 overall. West, 8-3 in the conference, 15-7 overall. Merrill, 5-6 in the conference. They have Everest coming up. They can finish 500 in the conference. They're 13-10 overall. Rapids, 3-8 in the conference. Everest, 2-9. East, 2-10. Real quickly, it's amazing to think, again, how things occur. Merrill, a week before they played Spash, lost to East on their home court by 20 points. And then they beat the conference champs And then Stevens Point able to bounce back and beat Marshfield. I mean, really something.
High school sports or not, you just don't know. And that's what the beauty of this is, that people, they can make this interesting. It's always interesting, especially when and the beauty of these conferences, the way they're aligned and set up is I think cool when you start to analyze and get to look at it the way we do each and every week. I think there's something to be said for Spash. Not the early favorites necessarily, but a team that, we talked about early in the year that could upset some teams, could make it interesting, could maybe not quite the top tier. And they were, they had to go win that game after they didn't accomplish what they wanted to in the previous game, and to get that double overtime against Marshfield was a big deal. They turned around and had a nice non-conference win against Rhinelander, and should be able to wrap it up again, provided nothing happens in their final game of the season against Rapids. Or their final conference game, I should say. For Marshfield, those are the tough ones to swallow. You do learn a lot about yourself through that adversity. Your team, I think, becomes tougher in a double overtime loss like that. But you also look at, as a coach, and some players sometimes pick out that one or two mistakes that just kind of cramped what could have been, what could have happened. But 18-5 overall, 9-2 right now in the conference, and put together a great season. They have probably the toughest, they want a little bit of luck with a Rapids win. Marshfield's got a little tougher because they're going to have to knock off West, which is never easy with all the talented players that they have. For West, beat East, bounced back or not bounced back, but took a nice non-conference win against Appleton West Monday. Kind of looking to solidify themselves, maybe to play spoiler a little bit to keep Marshfield out of there to tie that record up in that third place spot. Merrill, what can you say? We had Coach DeBoer on earlier in the year, talked about his strategy, which we'll talk about later.
Very interesting.
Yes, very interesting. I'm happy for him. He talked about what he thought of the girls, how hard he's had a battle to try to drive this competitive winning edge in them, and it's showing up. And I think if they get that next win and they finish out 14-10 for the regular season, that's a nice solid mark rolling into the playoffs. And they have just the job they've done in those games has been really good. The upset against Spash was a big one. And then for Everest, you feel for it. 2-21 overall right now. Some tough loss to Oshkosh West in terms of the numbers. And even that, after you get beat up by a big point margin like that, to bounce back and just not quite get over the hump, that might be the thing that they've been missing, is this finishing off games in a certain way with things. But Byler continues to get her numbers and do well. And hopefully they're looking to play a little spoiler with Merrill down the stretch.
GNC, Lakeland is on their way. They're winning the conference championship, 11-0. Mosinee, 9-2, 12-10 overall. Anago having a pretty good year, 7-4 in the conference, 12-11 overall. Rhinelander, 6-5 in the league. Medford, 4-7. Pines, 2-9. Tomahawk, 0-12. Not really any, conference games that had any significance. But I would say the game that was the most interesting game for the GNC was Monday, when Mosinee took on number 1 ranked Freedom and gave them everything they could handle. I mean, Mosinee went over there and lost 52-48. It was a 1-point game at halftime, 4-point game at the end. Taylor Jersley, 17. Gabby Munoz, 13 points, 12 boards. I would imagine that is a great result for Mosinee going into the postseason.
Well, good confidence builder. Just take alone their conference. They've built up a 9-2 mark to be on second place after a coaching change, abrupt coaching change in the middle of the season, after a lot lost to graduation. You want to hit your niche, and I thought I thought the same thing. I had to look up what Freedom was ranked again, because I thought they were ranked quite high, and then I saw that they were number 1 to only lose by 4. It's not a win on the scoreboard per se, but it's a win and carrying out a little momentum into these playoffs that's going to roll around quickly.
Turning to the Merriwood South, Assumption is the conference champions. They're 13-2 in the conference, 20-3 overall. Edgar 10-4 in the conference, 18-5 overall. Auburndale 9-5 in league, 15-8 overall. Marathon 8-7 in the conference, 12-11 overall. Newman Catholic 4-10 in the conference, 12-11 overall. Stratford 4-10 in the conference, 10-12 overall. Assumption had their hands full last Thursday. They edged Abbotsford 43-41 in Assumption, in Rapids, I should say, at Assumption. keep the English proper
A lot
here.
of teams with A's in the Merowith conferences.
Exactly right. Also Thursday, Edgar beat Medford in a non-conference game, 69-27. Newman all over Prentice, 78-39. Stratford beat Rib Lake 55-20, and Phillips beat Marathon in a crossover game, 64-45. Casey Eggebrecht 18, Ashley Packatong 13. Eggebrecht, of course, for Phillips, Packatong for Marathon. Then on Friday, big win for Athens, huge win for Athens because they needed this one to stay tied for first in the Merowith North, but they were able to beat Auburndale 56-51 in a crossover. Giselle Hartwig 23, Addison Levica 18-12, Anna Marie Alwe 13 for Auburndale. Monday night, Assumption officially clinched the conference with their 50-29 win over Stratford. Jordan Jaglinski, 13 points for Assumption. Newman over Boulder, 79-27. Sydney Galang, 15. Ashley Jankowski, 14. Mallory Roswadowski, 13, who I believe is related to Jeff Gress. And Maggie Wolf had 10 for the Cards. Edgar beat Northern Lutheran on Monday, 73-20. And Auburndale over Shiocton, 68-49. Anna Maria Alwe, 20. Ashland Grimm, 19. And then last night, Marathon, nice win on the road, 53-50 against Amherst. Callie Prohoda, 18. Chloe LaValle, 13 for the Raiders. Assumption beat Pacelli, 50-40. The freshman Jake Linsky had 20 points in that game to lead Assumption as well. And real quickly, I would add the Merowith North on Monday night. Phillips lost a non-conference game against a very good McDonald team, 61-45. Eggebrecht had 17. And then last night, Athens beat Pittsville, 73-68. Levica, 28. Selena Ellenbecker, 23. Phillips and Athens, 12-2 each in the conference. Merowith threw it all out there. What do you take away?
Just little things. I mean, for Assumption, when they bounce back after a tight one where they probably should have beat Abbey by quite a lot of points, that's a good job to solidify that conference win. I kind of like the fact that Newman Catholic just rolling into some wins here. I think they can do a little bit down the stretch of the season. They can get away. They have Stratford yet, so go get that win, get away from them, put them behind you in the conference, and then when they roll around with the playoffs, they're going to host some of the similar teams when they've been playing these bowlers. So they should be in a really good spot.
Real quickly, I saw them against Boulder, and obviously Boulder struggled. But just the way that Newman played, they were better with the basketball. They kind of, I thought, really ran the offense much better than I saw them early in the season. And to get 78 and 79 points, we haven't seen that from the Cards recently. They've been really struggling to put the ball in the hole for the last few years, in fact. I really liked where they are. I think that game against Stratford tomorrow is going to be interesting to see where they stand. And as you said, their bracket's not bad.
No, and I think maintaining that is going to be a big deal. You talked about the offense production, which has to come through, just spreading the ball and being more consistent, and I think those things are going to carry them through a little bit. Auburndale, it's going to be interesting to see what they did against Athens, and they lost that game, which allowed Athens to stay alive, like you said, against the Phillips team for that big battle with the top of the conference there, which will probably be a shared conference title, I would say, at the end of the day. So, but again, Athens-Phillips really making things interesting in all these crossover games that happen.
Yeah, about 3 minutes to go here because I want you to know that's as we head into a hard break. CWC Northern Lutheran 6-2 in the conference, behind only undefeated Gresham, who's 8-0. Boulder 4-4, and Northern rolled past Boulder 65-43 Friday. Bree Kane 19, Brianna Opsuts had 17 for Northland. And again, I mean, obviously Northland, as we'll talk about later, their seeding's not that high, but they're right there in the conference behind only Gresham.
Yeah, and doing a good job in the conference, sitting at 6-2, beating the teams that they should. Obviously, when they step out of the conference, a little bit more challenging, and you can see in the scoreboard in the loss to Edgar.
And finally, Wittenberg-Burnhamwood fighting for a conference title. Right now, a game behind Bondwell. Bondwell 12-1. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood 11-2. Iola Scandinavia 10-3. That three-way battle at the top. And Whitburn continues to be very solid. 19-3 overall after a couple of wins. They beat Amherst 55-47 Friday. Rory Salveson 16. Reese Rogowski 14. Faith Resch 12. And then last night, a non-conference win 55-36 over Wabeno Leona. Reese Rogowski 18, Rory Salveson 17 for the Chargers. They have the better schedule we'll talk about later for this week, but they're still right there, just one game back.
Yep, and they've been consistent. Sitting at the top of that conference, playing well behind Rognowski and Salveson, who always seem to be, like we talked about, the 1 and 2 punch.
2 peas in a pod, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, again, that's going to be interesting to see some of these teams like Whitburn, how far they can go in the playoffs. We're going to talk about the brackets coming up. We got about 90 seconds before our break. We are now at the end of our girls basketball segment. But again, I think we go back to the Valley. That game where Stevens Point beat Marshfield. Stevens Point went 4-0 against Marshfield and West. We're going to talk about it later. They're seated behind both those teams.
Yeah, there's the
Craig Terps is always he's a teddy bear often. I don't think he's too thrilled with that.
No, I would assume that's going to upset him. That's going to be one of those things we'll be talking down the stretch here if things don't play out the way teams expect. But that's a big deal in terms of why that happens, how that gets lost in the shuffle. There's no appeals. That's another big thing. And you got to give Spash the credit and at the same time feel a little bit for them because they go and carry out what they should in the win column. They win the conference. But they don't get the playoffs.
Real quickly before we do take a break, the thing about it is you have to remember all games count. And sometimes I think there's a sense when the coaches met, some games counted more than others. The computer doesn't look at it that way.
No, not
Stevens
at all.
Point lost a number of games, and that Merrill loss probably cost them 2 slots in that seating.
Right, well, and that's heartbreaking when you look at that. That one game can kind of cost you and shift you around a little bit.
10 seconds.
So we'll see where that plays out when we talk about it later on.
Absolutely. We got to take a break. We're going to come back and have our student-athlete guest coming up next. Grant Halmstad here on WXCO. And welcome back. It's hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and also on the Civic Media app. Here in hour number 2, we'll have both of our guests, our coach guest for this week, the boys basketball coach at DC Everest, Oliver Drake, will be joining us coming up at 7:40. But right now we are joined in studio by one of the captains of the Wausau West hockey team, Senior Grant Halmstad. And first of all, Grant, I really appreciate you coming on by. Obviously, it's exceptionally difficult after seeing your season and your high school career come to an end last night, but really do appreciate you coming on over tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate you for having me.
Absolutely. I guess we'll jump right in. Frustration because you'd had a really good regular season. It felt like your team was peaking at the moment you got hurt because they had played over at Eau Claire at Hobbs against Eau Claire North, a game that had significance for seeding because Eau Claire North and Wausau West were very similar, and your team went over there, won 10-4. Everything was clicking, and then you suffered a shoulder injury. What happened against Eau Claire North?
Before the game, we just had a conversation with the guys that we really needed to pull it together that day, and we needed to start playing as a team, and we did that. Every line started clicking, and we had a really good day that day, and I don't know, it sucks that.
What happened to you?
What happened to me?
Yeah.
I dislocated my shoulder. It was the second time I did that, but
And the thing about it was you were playing on an all-senior line that seemed like it was really clicking well. And that was not the line that you started the season with, but you had a chance to play with Thomas Scarum and Judah Leader on a line that was starting to produce big-time offensively. What clicked for you and your 2 line mates late in the season?
Yeah, we definitely had to get used to playing with each other. We hadn't always played with each other, but towards the end of the season, we started to figure out each other's tendencies, and we really just got comfortable with each other, and we started getting on a roll. But
and I was going to ask, how hard is it to stay focused and stay into it when you're injured? You know what I mean? People that don't do that, it's and you're out there and you're lively and you want to be playing. It's tough to sit back, isn't it? It's really tough to sit. It drives you nuts.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to watch for sure.
How hard was it for you? What was
Yeah, I hate not being out there with the guys, being able to help the team. But I tried to do everything I could on the bench and stay positive for everybody. And
what was the feeling last night? Obviously, that game, it's going on. It's 0-0 for a long time. Then all of a sudden, it's 1-0. Your team goes into the locker room down by 1 in a playoff game. Obviously, when the playoffs, you have that sense of you're looking at the clock and everybody starts to grip the stick a little bit harder. You were on the bench with your guys. What was the sense last night against Marshfield?
We were a little tense during the game. Obviously, we were just holding our sticks a little too tight. Like you said, we couldn't get anything to go, couldn't get the bounces to go our way, but we didn't bring it yesterday, and that was on us. And
the frustration aspect is you were about ready to come back, and the plan was for you to play tomorrow night in the next round. Obviously, you want to be careful with it, but in retrospect, it has to be incredibly frustrating not to have been out there with your guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, I really wish I would have been out there with them for the last game for everybody. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it probably was the right decision for Coach to have me not play. And nobody really could have foreseen that coming. And so, at the end of the day, you didn't know that was going to happen. And at the time that the decision was made, it was the right choice. So.
Again, we're talking to Grant Halmstad from the Wausau West Warrior hockey team here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Before I let Jeff jump back in, as a captain, one of the roles is to be a leader. What was your role last night?
Last night, my role was just encouraging the guys that were out there playing. You know, I try to do my best to stay positive for everybody and encourage the people that are out there playing the game and just try to keep the energy up on the bench and do the best I can.
So, you know, being a senior, graduated captain, all that, I'm assuming you had you have a lot of memories. You have a lot of things over from maybe the time you were a youth hockey player till now you're in high school. Just taking first this year, what's one of your favorite memories from this year? One of the things you'll take with you for a while that you really enjoyed?
One of my favorite things is a team overnight that we do like right before the season gets started, because like a lot of those new guys, like you know who they are, but you don't really know them yet, and so we get to spend like an overnight with the guys, and you really learn a lot about each other, and you get to spend a lot of time and learn about people, and you get a lot closer as a team. Like those team overnights, even with like long bus rides and hotel stays, like you get to learn a lot about them, not just as hockey players, but also as people.
It's one of the interesting things I'm sorry. Go on.
I just have one extra I was going to add. How about any favorite game from this season that this was, you know, I really liked the way we played together, and maybe, you know, take some perks for yourself. Any individual performance you sat back and, hey, I was proud of myself tonight. I did this.
I'd say my favorite game was actually the first time we played Spash, because we got down early in the game and we were down 4-0, and like after the second period we had to talk in the locker room, and we came back and we battled back to 4-4 and we took it to overtime, and it didn't go the way we wanted in overtime, but the way that the team came and played together that game, that we started to grow together as a team.
And how about a game for yourself individually? It could be over your career, it doesn't have to be from this year, but something you really thought that, hey, this is my game, this is my moment.
I mean, I always like playing against Spash. It's definitely my favorite team to play against. My favorite game personally, I would probably say Marshfield my sophomore year, because it was my first game back after my first shoulder dislocation, and it was my first varsity start, and I got my first varsity hat trick that game. So that was a pretty special one.
You mentioned the fact that you started the year with that overnight getaway and learning the team, and this group is interesting because you had seniors, you had freshmen that were major parts of this team, and everything in between. You don't see that all the time, where you have basically all four classes have a rather significant role. In terms of having a team to come together with freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors, is that sometimes difficult? Is it not difficult? How did it go for your team?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely different. I wouldn't say difficult, but we definitely had to do a lot more of like interaction with them as people, not just as hockey players, because it can definitely be nerve-wracking coming up as a young kid, and we knew that we were going to need every single guy, and so we had to do like the best that we could to bring them along with us and get them all in the group with everybody, and just so to get everybody comfortable, start playing together.
And Chad had mentioned that you guys were, you're peaking into this Marshfield game. You're playing really well. You're kind of getting where you needed to get to make a little run here. What were some of the things that, from your observations and the time you've spent in hockey, that you thought, our team is really doing this well? Whether it's younger guys coming together, what's something that made the last month or so or last couple games the most consistent for you guys?
I think it was definitely just the team dynamic, not even like on the ice, but we got a lot closer off the ice, and it helped us to stay more positive on the ice and play together with each other, and we were less selfish. Like we really started to play together as a team and share the puck well, and it started to happen later in the year. But
when did you start playing hockey? I know I asked you this at the start of the year for our special intermission feature that we run with the seniors, but for those folks who don't tune in every game like Jeff does, I'm sure. When did you start playing hockey?
I was 4 years old. I started playing mini mites.
When did you realize you were good at hockey?
I didn't realize I was good at hockey till probably about 8th grade, actually. I mean, I like my whole youth growing up, like I was on the A team and stuff, but my 6th and 7th grade, when I was in 6th and 7th grade, I started trying out for other teams, not just in our area, and I didn't make them. And so I had to work a lot to get a lot better in those years right before high school, and that's when I really started to get better.
Did you have a hockey influence, whether it's a player you looked up to or somebody in your life that helped you in terms of your hockey career up to this point? Any major influences?
Yeah, I mean, my stepdad, Chris Toner, played for West, and he's the one who got me into it when I was young, and so I kind of always I would go and skate with him, and he's the one who got me into hockey, so yeah.
I was gonna. You talked about not making a couple teams and having to fight to get your skills where you feel they needed to be set and where you want it to be to raise the success and put the bar where you wanted it to be. Did you have anything after you completed your junior year and then the off season came around until your senior year that like, hey, I got to work on it. I want to make this better. Something you wanted to improve going into your senior year, because often seniors, it's the last run. You want to make it the best. Was there part of your game you self-reflected on that you wanted to amp up a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. It was my skating. I really wanted to work on my skating, and in the off season, I did a lot of stuff to help with that, get faster feet and get stronger with my lower body. And it's something like, last year I'm a tall kid, but I was still growing into my body, and this year I kind of grew into it a little bit more, and my skating was definitely improved.
And I think that's very true. And in fact, at the point that you injured your shoulder against North, you were the team's leading scorer at that time. Did you feel like this season? I go back to when we did have that interview before the first game of the season, and I asked everybody, in terms of what they wanted to get out of their senior season, despite the disappointment of getting injured and not being out there for the playoff game. Were you able to accomplish what you wanted to during your senior campaign?
Yeah, just all I wanted for my senior year was to have our team go as far as we could, and obviously we didn't think it was going to end when it did, but we grew a lot as a team and we grew a lot as people, and I think just us playing together, I really enjoyed it, so I do think I got out of it what I had hoped.
Are you hoping to continue to play hockey?
I am. I don't know exactly all my options yet, but if there's options there, I am planning on continuing to play.
We'll come back and round about to hockey, but outside of hockey, if you have a chance, I guess number one, have you been involved in any other sports, or are you just a hockey guy?
No, I started playing lacrosse in middle school, and I played it all the way up through last year. And I don't think I'm going to play next year, but it was something I like to do. A lot of hockey guys did it, and it was something to do after the hockey season. So
I was going to ask you, because you said it, a lot of hockey guys seem to play lacrosse. What is it about lacrosse that draws hockey players to play it in their off season?
I feel like it's sort of like hockey on a field, and a lot of the same coaches coach it, and everyone's looking for something to do after the season ends for hockey, and it kind of shows up right at the right time, and a lot of people like that.
I was going to ask, Grant, if once you are, you said if the opportunity presents itself, are you looking to, because hockey players can take different routes. You can go play for a little bit here and there on different teams for a couple of years. You can go try to get into college and play there. Do you have a preference? Do you want to go hop on some team? You're going to want to go get your education, play at the same time?
Yeah, my plan would be to play juniors and take some online college classes like at the same time.
Do you have a favorite class that you like right now that you're thinking about, this might be something I want to do for the rest of my life, this might be something I want to major in if I get that opportunity for higher education?
Yeah, I really like the business and marketing classes, so I was planning on majoring in marketing, and
make lots of money, right?
That's always the goal. Yeah.
Again, we're talking to Grant Halmstad of the Wausau West hockey team, one of the Warriors senior captains here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. In terms of that next step, fortunately, Wausau West has had a number of players that have moved on to play, whether at the junior level or the collegiate level. Do you have any sources to help you along with these next decisions? Because obviously there can be, I guess, right decisions and maybe not right decisions. Do you have any people that you've been able to lean on in terms of trying to make those next steps?
Yeah, definitely our coach, Coach Brandt. He helps me out. I don't know all the ins and outs of that kind of stuff, but he does, and he's got a lot of people that he knows, and he definitely helps me out with that kind of stuff.
When you look at, again, being a leader on this team, what did you learn about yourself being a captain this year?
Something that I learned about myself is that in order to get people to follow you, you kind of have to cater to them in a sense, because not everybody will take something that you say in the same way. And to really get everybody on the same page, you got to learn the people that you're trying to get to follow you.
And going in the sense of that leadership, I think that can be driven two ways. Sometimes you got to learn how to do that a little bit. Sometimes it comes natural to you. How about for yourself? Is that something you always wanted to do, and it came just hand in hand, or did you have to work at that as another role that was important and meant something to you on this team?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, I am a fairly good leader. I am pretty good with that kind of stuff, but this year, especially with a lot of the young guys, it was a little bit different, and a lot of them didn't know me, and so it was hard, and we had to do a really good job of getting everybody on the same page, so it was a little bit different this year.
When you're not involved in hockey, when you're not involved in any of your school activities, what do you like to do to maybe get away from it all, to relax and have a little fun?
I enjoy hunting and fishing. You know, I've grew up around that, and I have a lot of friends who do it, and so in our off time we like to do that and just get outside and do something, you know.
Are we ready for the final question?
Yeah, we can. I'll go. So again, before I stated, and you've done this, you've logged a lot of hours in hockey. You're now on, moving into your next sport or next moment, so to speak, with graduation and everything. Reflecting back on the time you've had in the West hockey program, and for either some of those younger players you've already led a little bit, or somebody coming in brand new as a freshman, or thinking back to yourself, what advice you would want to hear when you were a freshman, what would you tell somebody that here's what you need to do to make this the best journey you possibly can before it's gone by and you don't get it anymore? What advice would you give somebody coming in that would give them their best high school career?
What I would say is show up every day and do the work and have fun while you're doing it, because if you're not having fun, it's just not going to be the best experience, and you got to make it fun, and you're going to make a lot of memories with a lot of your friends, and it's going to go by a lot faster than you think. And just take every moment, even those practices where you're tired and you're just ready to be done like that day, but you gotta find the fun in it, because one day they're going to be over and you're going to wish, like, you're going to miss that. And so...
And what do you think, just one quick other thing, what do you think, what is going to be the thing you will miss most about, going to the next journey? What's the thing that this is why this was a big deal to me?
I'm going to miss most just my friends and teammates, like the time that we get to spend together on buses, in the locker room, with each other at school, like all the memories that we made over the last 4 years. I'm going to miss the people in my class, like... We've had all these 4 years together, and we've gone through a lot of the same experiences, and it's a lot of good memories that I'll cherish, but it's a time that I'm going to miss too.
Grant Halmstad, the Wausau West Warriors senior captain. Again, really, congrats on all the success you have had on the ice the last few years, and again, thank you for coming in, because again, I know it's not easy when a high school career comes to an end, and then to have to come in here and talk about it less than 24 hours after that. Really, I thought you talk about leadership, I think that shows a lot of leadership. So again, thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, I really appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Grant Halmstad from Wausau West. We're going to take a quick break and then come back with more here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Again, thanks to Grant Halmstad for joining us here. As again, I mean, it's not easy to come in after the season ends. It's always easy to come in after a great win, but to come in after the season comes to an end, and did a terrific job.
Yeah, we talked off air. Very commendable. And great job on all the insights he talked about with his program team, his career. So, yeah, big applause here from us in the studio.
Well, let's jump right in terms of the boys looking ahead, in terms of games that we want to keep an eye on. We're going to kind of go through this a bit quickly and then go to the brackets on the girls' side. But in terms of the Valley, what do you see coming up in the next week?
I think, if you want to be the underdog, it would be a little tested. Marshfield has to go over to West on Friday. Never an easy place to play. I think West maybe will try to build off that East win to kind of take on Marshfield a little bit. Where's Spash? I'm looking at Spash.
Spash is at Rapids.
They got Rapids. Again, a little rivalry, and we talked about Rapids, a little inconsistency in their scores. You don't know what Coach Witter has up his sleeve that he's going to come. He's not going to make anything easy for Spash. And I guess looking at
a lot of non-conference games coming up.
Some non-conference games coming up. So, again, we talked, Marshfield's got their spot, solidified at the top of that conference, but Everest and Spash can't have any hiccups because they want to own the second place. Merrill West East are still trying to fight for some things a little bit within the middle of the pack there.
Spash has a good test at Eau Claire Memorial on Saturday. That could help that computer when the brackets are announced on Sunday. Great Northern, big matchup Friday. Medford will try to wrap up a perfect season in the conference at Mosinee. Obviously, Mosanee's got a lot of talent. If Medford does it, that would be a very impressive feat in that conference this year.
Oh, definitely. And Medford or Mosanee's not going to make it easy. They're going to look to blemish that record as best they can. I mean, you got players on there. They play well as a team. So Mosinee looking to just kind of hang over Northland Pines a little bit. But I think that's still going to be a war, and nothing's going to be easily earned for Medford.
And Mosinee has a non-conference game Monday at Brilliant, which is also another test.
Yeah. They don't make it easy on themselves when they're in this. These next couple games that they have.
Merriwood South, I think there's one huge game to talk about, and that's Friday night right here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230, live starting with the pregame show at 6:45. Newman at Marathon.
I can't be set up any better for the end of a. That's the game. That's the war right there. Game. You want to see the first time the game couldn't have gone any back and forth as if we remember that first one where Newman inched it out in overtime. Player needed to hit 3 to win it, 2 to tie it, and he hits 2 out of the 3 free throws when we weren't expecting that foul to occur on that play. And anyways, what I'm getting at is teams are going to be hungry. They're going to want to get that W, especially Marathon is in familiar territory. They've won that conference. Newman, since leaving Wissa Sports back in the late 90s to jump in the WIA, has never been a conference title for them in the Merriwood. So something that they can keep as their legacy and tradition, so they're not going to roll over. It's going to be standing room only, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun Friday broadcasting.
And also Newman at Stoughton on Saturday. That's another good game I'm really looking forward to seeing as well. Again, Cardinals are challenging themselves late to set themselves up for what's coming.
Hey, they have not had an easy schedule. I mean, the Prentice was a little harder than they probably expected, but the Platteville, the Columbus, Stoughton, Marathon here, they really end with a schedule that amps them up for the playoff run, and maybe might even be tougher than the first couple games in playoff.
Anything else coming up before we turn to the brackets on the girls' side? Anything else that you want to mention before we turn our attention back to the girls?
Nothing that really stands out. The Merriwood, you got a couple more conference games in there. Athens has solidified the North. I think, I'm just really excited to see what happens in that Marathon Newman Catholic game, because I just think there's a lot at stake, and they're built a little differently. They're both very good teams, built a little differently in the styles that they play, which I think is going to make for a great game Friday night.
And I guess real quickly on the girls' side, before we turn to the brackets themselves, the final days of the regular season, some interesting games, I think, both in the Valley and also in the Merriwood South. You got that game tomorrow at Marshfield with Wausau West and Marshfield. I think for both teams, they want to win that game. They want to go into the postseason, a very tough bracket with a little bit of momentum. We'll have that game tomorrow as well, right here on Bull Falls Radio at 7 o'clock. I think that Merrill wants to beat Everest and get to 500 in the conference. I think that is significant for the Merrill Blue Jays. We talked to Coach DeBoer back early in the season. His goal was to get into that position right below the Big Three, and that's what he's been able to do. Very impressive as well. And I think in those Merriwood South, I think the Marathon Assumption game, I think Marathon is going to give Assumption a bit of a battle. I'm curious to see if Newman can continue their offensive improvement at Stratford coming up as well. So any thoughts on those couple of games?
The West Marshfield's probably one of the bigger ones because there's more at stake for teams to jockey for position within being behind Spash in that conference. I think Merrill's important in the sense that it's just this idea that sometimes for coaches when they when they take over the programs, there's a transition built to a program that hasn't been used to this competitive edge and this winningness that takes some time to grow and nurture. And I think Coach DeBoer's done that with a unique strategy that he talked about when he was on early in the season. So I think a win at Everest for them is going to be a good thing. And I agree with you on the Merrillwood South side, where I always look forward to when Coach Schneider's coaching to what scheme he's going to come up with and what hard time he's going to try to give the other team through what his girls do offensively and defensively. So I think because they're looking for that same idea of rolling the playoffs with some momentum. And I think Newman's offensive presence and the distribution of the ball has made them a little bit stronger team here down the stretch. And I think if they continue to do that, they're going to start matching up with teams that they've been to war in their conference. And now some of these playoff teams, looking at the difference in wins and losses, is going to have an easier route for them.
Let's look at these brackets. Start with Division I and Wisconsin Valley Conference schools involved. You got 16 and 17. There's a 17-team bracket in Sectional 1. DC Everest will play Wisconsin Rapids in basically a play-in game in order to get a very difficult trip to Neenah. But Everest and Rapids, the 17-16, the winner plays at number 1 Neenah. Stevens Point, the Wisconsin Valley Conference champs, number 8 seed. They will play host to number 9 Oshkosh West a week from Friday. Likely a winner will go to Neenah the following day. So obviously it's a very difficult part of the bracket. You have Marshfield, the number 6 seed. They will host number 11 Holman, and number 7 Wausau West home against number 10 Appleton East. And Appleton East has been a solid program. Obviously they lost some very talented players to graduation in the last couple of years, but I guess the big story is the 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah, I'm going to jump back to that play-in game quick. It's always such a... You want your more games as the playoffs run. You want that new start to the season, but what a tough draw. You want to get almost out of that game because you turn around and you got the heavy favorite. And again, you roll the dice and no pressure once you do that when you play that number 1 seed. But always a tough one, a tough spot to be in, I think. So you look to try to get out of that. I don't know. Where do you? I mean, we talked about it off air a little bit. Here's a way where Smash as a conference champ has the best conference record. Did their damage against Marshfield and West in the conference. Yet Marshfield West are seated ahead of them. There's games you can pinpoint though that when people don't take into consideration when you're talking in a seating meeting, they're not brought up that much. There might not be that heavy amount of weight on them, but the computer shoves them in there and distributes that. The Merrill loss being a big one for Spash. So I'm sure Spash, that's going to be a driving force that we should be seated in a different spot, and we own these spots, so they're going to be coming at people. And for Marshfield and West, got to be happy that they're in some of those locations.
I think that Wausau West is in a pretty good spot. Yep. They got the home game, and then if they win, obviously it's a long trip to Superior. But I think it's preferable than to, say, Neenah or even to Hortonville, the number 3 seed. I think Wausau West has a route with their talent and their experience to work their way into the sectional.
Yeah, and their coach's experience. I mean, Coach Weinkauf's seen everything that's ever been probably happened with basketball, right? He's just been around there a long time and done that job for so long and done it well. So I think West, sometimes those numbers matter. And it's harder now with the computer because you don't get to sit there and jockey for that position. We talked about it. No appeals process. No arguments can happen. So you lose those battles a little bit.
And they've seen Superior before at the Marshfield tournament.
Right. So I think West has, like you said, they have the favorable pathway to get to where they want the playoffs. You want to stay in that conference yet, or not? I was going to mention Merrill, but
let's go to Division 2.
Okay.
We'll go right to Division 2.
Gotcha. Go for it.
Where a few of the other conference Central Wisconsin teams in Sectional 1, D2, in the bottom of the bracket, a regional bracket. You got New London, number 1, Lakeland, number 2, the GNC champs, Merrill, number 3. And Merrill gets a first-round bye. They'll take on the winner of number 6, Antigo, and number 11, Wapaka. Number 2, Lakeland gets a first-round bye. They'll take on the winner of number 10, Wausau East, number 7, Ashland. Mosinee is a number 4 seed. They get a home game in the regional semifinals. They play number 5 seeded Shawano at home, and New London will face the winner of Medford and Rhinelander, the 9-8 game. But starting off with East real quickly, it is a long trip, but I think East has shown the ability this season to be a bit more competitive than they've been in the past.
Right, some of their scores are. I mean, got the nice Merrill win. There's a couple other ones that have been a little tighter. I think they're at the point where they can roll it a little bit up there at Ashland and see what they got. It's favorable numbers, and they've been battle tested a little bit in the Valley for the girls.
And real quickly, it's interesting because if East wins, they play Lakeland. They play Lakeland tomorrow night.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Isn't that interesting?
Which is going to be a long haul with how good Lakeland is.
But, I know, but it's always interesting when you have that potential of playing a team when you look at the bracket, because the bracket is out, you say, oh, boy.
Right. Well, you can imagine the first one's kind of I don't know if it's not a wash, but it's a route to kind of see where you stand, especially when.
What do you show? What do you don't show?
Especially when Lakeland is probably highly favorable just because they've proven that they've been a better team throughout the season.
Well, let's talk about Merrill, because we got to talk about, because this has been a story we've been looking at all year, because we had Coach DeBoer on one of the first weeks of the year. We talked about his scheduling. We talked about the plan of attack with the computers. It looks like it worked.
Well, yeah, and his scheduling idea was, just as a quick reminder to the listeners, it was that playing the non-conference is what it is. We're just going to play some teams that are getting some wins, or we might need to get some wins there, because our conference is going to give us enough of the tough opponents that we need to see throughout the season to be ready for the playoffs. And 14-10 if they win the last game, they're 500 in the conference then, and first round bye, waiting to see who their opponent is. I mean, we're in a nice 3 ranking.
And ultimately, potentially a matchup with Lakeland in the regional final, which would be, I think, an interesting game, because Merrill has a little bit of size.
Yep.
And obviously Lakeland has great size and great talent. But in terms of the matchup, maybe Merrill would be able to do some things to try to negate to a certain level the talent, especially if Christina women.
Well, you're going to have to. And they've done some of those, the win against Spash. They've played some solid athletes that put up a scoring punch within the Valley on a couple of these teams. So the difference is there's 2 Womette sisters on the one team that you got to worry about, where other teams have had one athlete there that are kind of trying to stop their scoring punch.
Division 4 involves a lot of teams from the Merrillwood Conference. You got Phillips, a number 1 seed in sectional number 1, and they get a first round bye. They'll take on either Chautauqua Weyerhaeuser or Boyceville in that bracket. They're away from everybody else. The 2 seed in that bracket is Cadott, number 3 Colfax, number 4 Grantsburg, but Phillips has earned a number 1 seed in their regional. Neilsville at the bottom half of their bracket in that sectional. So if it goes as bracketed, potentially in a sectional semifinal, we'd have a Neilsville game against Phillips. Actually, it would be a sectional final game, Neilsville versus Phillips down the line.
Which at that point, so I mean, both teams have earned their. That's the biggest thing you don't want to see in the playoffs.
I think Neilsville's undefeated. If I'm not mistaken.
Where some of these teams are knocking out the better, they're hitting each other too soon. So you'd want that as the game to go to state. That'd be a well-earned game for whoever comes out with a W on that one.
Other sectional number 2, got a bunch of area teams. You have Marathoni, number 5 seed. They will host number 12 seeded Nakusa next Tuesday night. The winner goes to Auburndale. In fact, that would be an interesting game, Marathon at Auburndale. Marathon had a double-digit lead in Auburndale in a game that I did earlier in the season. Auburndale came back to win a nail-biter. So Auburndale waiting, likely Marathon in the regional semifinal. Wittenberg-Burnhamwood also in that bracket, number 3 seeded. They get a first-round bye. They will wait for either number 6 Stratford, number 11 Wyowega-Fremont. So, again, those are the area teams. Westfield is a very good program. They're number 2 seeded. And St. Mary Catholic, who's been among the top 5 ranked teams in the state all year long, the number 1 seed.
Well, let's look back at Wittenberg, because they've been playing really well. They also finish out, I think it's their last game. They have Wyowega-Fremont this Thursday. They may have 2 games left, but I know that's one of their last games for sure that they play. So there's another example where if Wyowega is able to beat Stratford, you see that same team right away again. For who was I looking at? Marathon. I think an interesting route there. I think, like you mentioned, they'll take care of Nakusa. And then to have that 3rd shot at Auburndale again, I think is a big deal of Coach Snyder and his crew. And that'll be an interesting game the way it plays out, because they've been, kind of on how their scoring goes. They've been competitive, and they've rode how the players are able to put the ball in the basket consistently, because they always play good defense. His teams have always been well. So I think that'll be interesting to see which way that one plays out.
Division 5, you got Assumption, a number 1 seed, taking on number 16 Port Edwards. They would then face either Pacelli or Rosholt in the next round. You have Prentice, a number 12 seed at number 5, Alman Bancroft. Tri-County, number 13 against number 4, Iola Scandinavia. Bottom of the bracket, number 2 seeded Edgar against number 15, Tigerton. The winner of that one will take on either number 7 seeded Newman against number 10 seeded Gresham in the first round. Then you have number 11 seeded Northern Lutheran having to go to Marshfield to take on Columbus. And number 3 is Athens against number 14, Rib Lake.
Well, with Assumption, I think it's interesting that in the next round they could play Pacelli right away. They only beat him by 10 at Pacelli there. I know that would be back on Assumption's floor, but that makes it a little difference. Edgar should handle Tigerton. Newman, I think, has shown where they're going to stand with what they did against Bowler, with Gresham being the same guy. Now, Gresham's a little higher up in that conference, I think, but still, I just see a difference in competition levels of how those two teams play. And then Athens, I think, is going to take care of Rib Lake, but still an interesting route where they're going to end up. They come off the volleyball success, have a very successful basketball season at 21-3 and 12-2 overall in that conference, and I think they're going to be a force down the stretch of the playoffs.
And I'm guessing they probably think they should be number 2 and not number 3 based on the results this year. But
yes, definitely.
I think they beat Edgar, if I'm not mistaken.
I'd have to double check.
I know.
But
we have to take a break because I know that Coach Oliver Drake is waiting for our call. So we'll have the coach of the Evergreens coming up next here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And right now it's time for our coach guest for this week. And we're very happy to welcome from the DC Everest Evergreens, the head coach of the boys basketball team, Oliver Drake. And Coach, first of all, I know it's a busy time of year, heading down the stretch in the conference, getting closer to the seedings and the playoffs. Really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be with you guys.
Hey, first year, head coach of DC Everest. I want to ask before we talk specifically about the season and your players and all that, when you come into a new job, sometimes you come in with a complete rebuilding project. Other times you come in with a group that's expected to be very competitive and have an opportunity to do some pretty good things. Obviously, you came in with a DC Everest team that's had some success in recent years and had some very good talent, obviously, led by Marcus Hall. As you go into the start of a new project, how does it affect how you begin in terms of building the program that you want when you have maybe expectations the first season as opposed to a chance to maybe slowly build?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that I think all of us feel a sense of urgency. You don't get a guy like Marcus Hall, year in and year out. And so there's certainly urgency with let's get results now. But I think our focus, regardless of who we have in uniform, has to be about the process and just trying to get better, really trying to teach the game, in simple ways and really get really good at the things that happen the most. So we don't want to shortcut things or try to microwave the process because we have a really, really good player and some other really good players. We still want to build it foundationally with really solid stuff. And so certainly there's more urgency when you have a senior like Marcus, but you still got to build it the right way and so that you can have success over the long haul.
And Coach, first off, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you, to your resume before you came over to Everest, did you have some college coaching experience?
Yeah, I spent the last 19 years, the last 12 years as a head college coach. So, yeah, I've spent a significant portion of my coaching career at the collegiate level.
So, okay, and my vocab's often, so it's not some, it's plenty. And I just wanted to roll into my question, not because I had heard you had, and I wanted to double check. So that's my question. Is there an adjustment factor on your side, or do you even see it, or is there any necessary differences that are a big deal that jumping from living so much in the collegiate life to now sliding down to a high school level program?
Yeah, there are. There's definitely differences, but coaching, as you know, coaching's coaching. I don't care if you're coaching fourth grade or you're coaching, fifth year seniors in college. It comes down to holding people accountable, building great relationships. Getting really good at the basics. Like really being fundamentally sound, and So I think good coaching, good playing, it sees no levels. So, yeah, there's certainly differences, only having 8 days before our first game, in high school versus, 30-some practices in college. But it still comes down to the same things. And I think that's building quality relationships and not being afraid to hold people accountable and telling people the truth. And that's what we're trying to build our program on, is accountability and the truth, and being really good at the basics.
One of the interesting things when you say the limited amount of time before you tipped off the season, I recall that your team has played a very challenging non-conference schedule going into the Wisconsin Valley Conference. Obviously, you play in the WVC as well. As this trek has gone on, obviously there's been ups, there's been downs. How would you describe the season so far for DC Everest?
Well, I think, obviously wins and losses is what the outsiders and what people on the outside are going to look at. But I think it's been a huge success. I've really, really enjoyed working with our guys. We got an outstanding group of, guys led by, obviously, Marcus Hall, one of our seniors, Connor McFarland, another senior, and Arlen Sangster. We have 3 really good seniors, and they've really set the tone behind the scenes, and it allowed us to coach them up. And these guys want to be coached. They want to be held accountable. Certainly, we haven't played our best basketball yet. I don't think that's uncommon for a first-year system or just anytime change is part of the process. I think it's gonna take more time, and I certainly hope and I'm optimistic that we're going to play our best basketball when it matters most. But I'm really excited about what we're building here. I'm really excited about our first season here, and I'm just really thankful to get the opportunity to work with these guys every day.
And Coach, going forward with the playoffs looming, the regular season coming to an end, what are, just with your team? You mentioned a couple things here and there, but what you really like about your team right now, and say, I know the journey a little bit, I know the process, I want to be playing our best basketball. Here's something we want to hit as soon as we possibly can to be on top of our game as we make this final stretch.
Yeah, I think number one is I really like, we're really rebounding the ball, and I think that's something that travels. Sometimes your shooting doesn't travel, but rebounding does. We've been consistently out-rebounding our opponents, and some really good opponents. For example, last night in a tough loss against a really good Medford team, we really out-rebounded them. So that's one of the things that I've been really, really pleased with, is our guys' willingness to get on the glass on both ends and really being physical on the glass. I think on the flip side, we got to clean up some of our turnovers. We're just not valuing the basketball at the level that I think we can value the ball at. And as you guys know, if you don't get shots, you got no chance of winning. So, for example, last night we had 16 turnovers, and that's just too many for the kind of players we have and how we're capable of playing. So we've got to clean the turnovers up. We got to continue to rebound. And we got to continue to really get invested on the defensive end. That defensive rebounding always travels. Valuing the basketball always travels. And then just continuing to take really, really good shots. We got a really skilled team. I think our shot selection has been pretty good. I think it can continue to get better. But, again, just being really good at those things that happen the most. And that's, defending, rebounding, valuing the basketball, and just get really quality shots on the offensive end.
Again, we're talking to DC Everest boys basketball coach Oliver Drake here on the Big High School Sports Show. You'd mentioned defense, and I think over the last couple of years, DC Everest was one of those teams known as a team that's going to put up huge numbers offensively and maybe give up huge numbers defensively. It has been noticed that you are playing a lot more defense. How much of it is truly between the ears to get that defensive mentality to take those steps defensively that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I just think, defense is one of those things, you can't hold all of your guys ultra accountable for things always offensively because it's so based on skill. But defense is one of those things. Anybody can get in a stance. Anybody can move on airtime. Anybody can have hands and feet on a closeout. Anybody can talk. Anybody can move on airtime. Check out, So that's what we're trying to really preach is, hey, these are the things that you control. These are the things that take no talent. That doesn't mean they're easy to do. That's why a lot of teams aren't good defensively, and we are certainly a work in progress. We're far from great defensively, but again, I give all the credit to our players. They've been totally receptive. They're working at it. Like I said, we got a long way still to go, but these guys want to be coached, and they know that we got to get better in those areas if we want to overachieve or achieve at a level equal to our talent, and that's ultimately the goal for every team. And I still think we can do that this year.
Coach, in your first season, what'd you think of the Valley? I mean, because every coach, every player that's within their own conference, best conference, toughest, you defend it and you give it the props it deserves because you go out any given night and you're warring with the other teams, and that totally makes sense, and that's fair and what it should be. But now, you guys are winding down with a game or two left in the conference for most of the teams. What's kind of been your observations of what you've seen out of this conference in Central Wisconsin here?
Oh, it's just a really fun league. I mean, anytime you got, alumni from your conference starting on NBA teams, I think that says something about the quality of play, right? We got a guy starting, Hauser starting and for the Boston Celtics, and another one starting for Michigan State, among all the other really good small college players that have come out of this league recently. So really, really good players first and foremost, hard-nosed, blue-collar, all the stuff I love. Teams that want to defend, teams that want to share the basketball. Just really quality programs, schools, coaches, and it really makes it fun. I think, coming from where I came from, it's been really enjoyable. And again, there are really good players in this league and really good coaches. And it's the kind of league, as we found out the hard way. When you play in conference games, you can throw out the records. You better be ready to square up against somebody. You better be ready to dig your heels in the sand and compete. And if you don't, you're not going to get what you want to get out of it. So we've had to learn that the hard way a little bit. But it's been a really fun league to compete in and really enjoyed it thus far.
Let's talk a little bit about your guys. You got Marcus Hall. I saw against West last week. You got some good production from Casey Studeman, Connor McFarland. Cohen Preby is a kid you got to keep an eye on as well. Could you talk a little bit about your guys? Who's the kids that have really stepped up, maybe impressed you here in your first season?
Yeah, well, obviously everything starts with us with Marcus. And I think the thing that people don't see, what they see on game night, but the things that you don't see with Marcus is the kind of teammate he is. I mean, he is constantly empowering his teammates, coaching them, holding them accountable, pumping them up. And then the other thing is just his work ethic. I mean, Marcus, behind the scenes, is just phenomenal, whether it's in school, whether it's socially, whether it's, anything he does, he's going to do it with everything that he's got. So, anytime you have a leader, your best player is your hardest worker, you got a chance. And that's what Marcus gives us every night. The other really cool thing about Marcus is he's kind of a throwback. He's low maintenance. He could have drawn a ton of attention, drawn out his recruiting process. He didn't like any of that. He's just a really refreshing dude to be around. He's about all the right stuff. And I just think the sky's the limit with that. Once he gets in a college program and he continues to mature as a person and as a player, it's going to be really fun to follow his career. Now, we still have some more time with him left, and I'm cherishing every moment we have and every opportunity we have to coach him. But he's been phenomenal. And then, Connor McFarland's been another really good senior for us, a guy that's been around the block. And, he's second on our team in assists. He's really unselfish, really makes us go getting downhill and sticking and spraying out to the perimeter and setting other guys up. And then Arlen Sangster, another senior for us, this guy coming off a great football season and has been kind of new to the game. Just started playing a few years back and really, great athlete. Just as a kid you really want to root for. He's overcome a lot of adversity in his life and just a really high character, a great teammate. You brought up Cohen Preby. I think Cohen Preby, sky's the limit for him, a sophomore, a guy that was, started as a freshman and put up good numbers. And Cohen's still just scratching the surface too. We got a lot of time left with him, and we're really excited about his growth. And that guy that's kind of come on the scene, is Casey Studeman. I mean, I think there's another guy that, as a sophomore, last night he was 7 for 7 from the field. He's a great rebounder. He'll do whatever it takes. Some games he gets a few shots, some games he gets a lot. He doesn't care about any of that. He's just willing to do whatever it takes. So all of our guys, Colin Ebersol, a junior for us, who played all JV last year, is our lockdown defender. I mean, we just have a lot of guys that they don't care about, their deal. They're just really concerned about ours and really understand it's a team game and a really fun group to be around. They all like each other, do outstanding work in the classroom, and just really represent DC Everest in our program in a phenomenal way.
And Coach, I guess going forward, I won't ask you about the playoffs because every good coach will give the answer that we're taking one game at a time, but I know you got to have your eyes. Every coach has to have their eyes out there too. So, you beat West last Thursday. Obviously, very good team against Medford. Had the loss, but played a very good team. What do you expect out of your guys? What are you looking forward to when you go over to Merrill on Friday?
Well, it's going to be a fight. Merrill always plays hard and hard nosed, and we, like I said before, we unfortunately have learned the hard way. You need to be ready to go in every game, but especially conference games. There are no secrets. Everybody knows each other inside and out. Everybody's going to give each other their best shot. So we need to be strapped up and ready to go and be ready for a really hard-nosed Merrill team and a team that's going to fight us to the end and a team that's not going to hand us anything. We're going to have to earn everything, and we got to match or surpass whatever they bring to the table from an effort, toughness standpoint. If we do those things, we'll have a chance, and if we don't, we won't. And so that's just the way it goes in conference play, and certainly we're excited, for Sunday for the seedings to come out. And, it just gives you a little more direction on, as you start to prepare and scout. And I'd be lying if I said I'm not, because we want to know where are we going, who are we facing, what seed do we have, how does this whole system work? I'm green as can be to this system. So from a coaching standpoint, too, as you guys know, it's all about preparation and being prepared. And so I want to start, it's never too early to start understanding what you're going to face in your opening round. And ultimately, that's when we want to play our best basketball. So, yeah, we're excited. Obviously, like you said, the coaches talk is we're going to take it one game at a time. We're certainly going to do those things, focus on getting better. But it is a time to be excited. This is what you've been working for to get to this point in the season. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about to say you're looking forward to postseason because that's where everything's earned. That's where your legacy's left, and that's what I think this group has a chance to do, leave a legacy. That's one that's really proud and a team that really played its best basketball when it mattered most.
And I think you hit on the head, though. This is, I think, the most fun 3 or 4 weeks of the year once we get going here in the final week of the regular season, then the postseason as well. And, Coach, really do appreciate it. Best of luck against Merrill. Best of luck as we get those brackets, and best of luck to get into the playoffs. But, again, really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate being with you.
Head Coach Oliver Drake of the DC Everest Evergreens. And, Jeff, we have about a minute to go before we wrap up tonight's show. Where do we want to finish?
Looking for a lot of things to see how some of those Final Valley games play out, to see the war for the conference title between the Merrillwood with Marathon and Newman Catholic boys basketball on Friday, and I think a couple key girl matchups to see that are playing out in specific conference before they're with excitement and stuff predicating leading into the playoff brackets that they're going to have to, and how things are going to pop. So.
Yep, on Tuesday night, the girls' basketball playoffs get underway. Should be a whole lot of fun over the next few weeks. Thanks to our guests, again, from Wausau West Hockey, Grant Halmstad, our student-athlete guest, and DC Everest boys basketball coach Oliver Drake for joining us. And thanks again to Jeff Gress for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds great, Chad. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. And make sure you tune in to all the great action coming up. Tomorrow night, Wausau West at Marshfield and girls hoops. Friday night, we have Newman at Marathon and boys hoops, and then Newman in non-conference action at Stoughton on Saturday afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on WXCO.